Hey everybody, my name is Jared and I am a Master Mason in the state of Mississippi, and this is my wife, Jennifer. If you follow me over on Facebook and Twitter, you may have seen her before in a couple pictures for where we go out and visit Order of the Eastern Star chapters, but this is her first time appearing with me on video here on the What is a Mason channel. So, the purpose of this video is to answer a viewer's question. That viewer's question is, would it be possible for you to do a short video to show to a spouse or partner? Now, as it happens, I chatted on the side with the viewer that asked this question, and I really don't think I could do a short video. But what we can do is have a video and have a little bit of a discussion. So I turned around and asked on social media what kind of questions people's spouses had, because if I came into this with nothing more than our experience, then it was going to be a very short video. So I reached out and asked people what sort of things were their spouses concerned about that I could maybe try to put into a video. And then another brother, another Mississippi Master Mason as a matter of fact, had the bright idea to say, hey, if this is a video about questions a spouse has, why not bring your wife into the video? And she agreed, so thank you.
I always agree to be in the videos with you.
All right, so let's get the easy to answer question out of the way. Did you have any specific concerns, questions, or anything about when I first came to you and said, hey, I'm gonna join the Masons?
Well, not that I can remember.
Yeah. So I was made a Mason back in 2011. So we're talking 6 years now, more like 6.5 if you want to get technical. So we're stretching the imagination or stretching the memory here, trying to figure out what may have happened between us. Obviously, if there were questions, they must not have been a big deal.
No, definitely not a big deal. I remember wanting to find out why I couldn't join with you.
Okay, so now in sort of full disclosure, so it's been 6 years. I've been the master of my lodge twice. I'm a York Rite Mason, I'm a Scottish Rite Mason, and we together are in the Eastern
Star.
Right. So even though you don't come to Blue Lodge with me, you've been to dinner and fundraisers and things like that.
Yeah, and I know all your friends and
yeah. But even though we're an Eastern Star together, you still don't know what actually happens up in Blue Lodge, but you can get a sense for it because we've talked, and I've told you that Eastern Star is similar.
Right.
Yeah. So, do you think that... I guess the easiest thing, I think the first thing that's probably worth this conversation is, we have a special relationship.
We have a very special relationship.
And that's not to take away from any of our viewers and what kind of a relationship they have with their significant other, but secrets between us just don't happen.
No. Until this lodge came around anyway.
Right. Kind of like the biggest secret we've ever had between each other is, what was the Christmas present going to be? Or
yeah, and even like that's hard to keep from each other.
It is. But I have had jobs where I couldn't tell you what was going on at the job and things like that. So, did you ever have a question in your mind? Here's an example of one of the questions that a viewer said that may have come up with their spouse. The idea that Masonic lodges are just a boys' social club, and all we do is run out there, hang out, smoke, drink, and play pool all night, and when we're done partying, we come home back to our families. Like it's just a boys' night out thing.
Sometimes it does feel that way, and there are some nights when I know that that's pretty darn close to what you're doing, but...
No alcohol is allowed in a Mississippi lodge.
No, not the alcohol. Hanging out with the friends. But I also know that there's a lot of good work that goes on too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's fair because even if you went and asked the guys, what do you get the most out of Freemasonry?
Socialization.
Yeah, they're going to say, I just love being with my brothers. and all that stuff we learned, that's pretty cool too.
You're right.
You know,
Exactly.
but I think in fairness, you feel the same way about Eastern Star, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, definitely.
Because, I mean, we are in the process right now of becoming dual members at another lodge.
Because all my friends go there.
Right. You click better with that group of ladies.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's not that they have more education or
No.
teach any more about the symbolism or any of the deep learning stuff. It's just those are the people I have more fun with.
Yeah, everyone in both the lodges learn the exact same things. We go through the exact same rituals, but it's more fun at the one than it is the other. And yeah, I still have a lot of friends at the first one, but yeah.
Okay. So usually, and I don't want to get too far off into this squirrel hole because it'd take us off on entirely different subjects. But another question that I get once in a while is, you know, well, hey, if I could, you know, if the social interaction is what I'm looking for, why do I need to join a Masonic lodge? Why can't I get it from wherever?
If you're just joining for the social interaction, then don't, because you can get that in other places.
But sort of to append on to that, I would suggest that there is something special about if you join Freemasonry, you join Eastern Star, and you do go through a ceremony or ritual and knowing that those people did that for you, knowing that they went through it as well, knowing that you have certain commonalities with them on what you believe and how you see the world, does bring the group closer together.
Yeah.
And in a way, just to kind of give an example, I mean, if you work at a place for a long enough time, you sort of become family with some of, if not all of your coworkers. If you serve in the armed forces, you can form that brother and sisterhood with your comrades at arms. And
if you worked in the high end of a church, you would become closer to the other members, the working
the
body of
administrative
the church.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. So, but
there's things that you'll learn at lodge that you won't learn in these other institutions.
Yeah. So we know that, yes, we do like going out and hanging with the guys or hanging with the gals.
Yeah.
But we also know that that's, I mean, we might as well be hanging out having a book club.
Right.
You know, it's not like we're not going to the pool hall.
Right.
And things like that. So let's kind of get back a bit to the secrecy. We talked about how you and I have never had a secret. We've always, you know, even from prior relationships, from before when we got married, you know, we've told each other all the gory stories and whatever else. But then whether it's me having a job at the Navy base and security clearances and I can't tell you about whatever was going on there, or whether it's, hey, I'm at lodge and here's what I can tell you, here's what I can't. Somewhere in life people experience secrets. You know, hey, I just can't tell you that. Maybe you work at KFC and you figured out what the 11 herbs and spices are and you just can't tell your wife. I don't know.
Salt.
It is salt.
It is salt.
Yeah, but is it Himalayan?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. This is our relationship. We have a lot of fun. All right, so I think that the real answer here, the question that kind of is underlying is, why can't you tell me everything? So, as if my wife is asking me, well, why can't you tell me the secrets? And if I were to get down to it, I think what the actual answer to that question is because I have to develop trust. So if I go to lodge and somebody says, hey, I want to know that I can trust you, so I'm going to tell you something and I want you to never tell anybody ever again, and here's that thing I tell you. But then I come home and I mention it to you, and you know, I'd like to think that I can tell you something and that you never tell anybody else either, but that starts the slippery slope.
It does.
You know, because now you've got a good friend that you trust in confidence, and if you tell her that she won't tell anybody, and by the time we get around to it, there's this big, the inner circle just keeps getting wider and wider and wider.
Right. It goes hand in hand with integrity.
Right. So when it comes down to it, the secrets of Freemasonry, we know there's not, you know, a Knight Templar treasure under Manhattan or anything like that I'm keeping as a secret. It really boils down to...
Well, of course not. Then we'd be rich.
No kidding. I wouldn't be making YouTube videos. If somebody at Lodge said to me, no matter what anybody else tells you, I'm telling you the sky is purple. But you can't ever tell anybody that. You know, I mean, it's those levels of secrets just to be able to say, well, is he going to tell or not?
Right.
It's not like, you know, hey, here's the launch codes to the nukes. It's not here's where the Templar treasure is. It's not here's this one line sentence that's going to totally revolutionize your life or things like that. It's here is something I want you to know. And in Masonry, we've talked about this in other videos, and you're familiar with this concept with the Eastern Star. There are words in the ritual that are secret, but the most common thing that is secret with these fraternal organizations are what are called modes of recognition.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say, is how to recognize one brother or one sister from the next.
Right. And so in Freemasonry, they try to tie that back to mean, you know, well, hey, at some point this was a stonemasons guild, and, you know, not everybody knew everybody, and I could have traveled 60 miles into this workplace, and I have to prove to them that I'm a skilled stonemason. How do I do that? Well, by certain modes of recognition that are only known by the stonemasons.
And you've run into that too, because when we went up into Kentucky, you had to prove to them that you were a Mason.
That's right. So now, again, it's not an earth-shattering secret,
No.
but it's the concept of that integrity that you were talking about. If we tell him, will he keep it? And so those, I think, are the secrets we're talking about, and the why we don't go home and talk to our spouses about it. Now, the flip side of that coin is that Masonic lodges, in general, are not doing a good job in explaining to their members what is or what is not secret. And so too many times men go back home after getting their initiation and they tell their wives, I can't tell you anything.
And that's not true either.
It's not true. I don't care which jurisdiction you live in. There's something you can tell her. Telling your spouse, I can't tell you anything, is just ripe for causing division in the relationship.
I probably know about as much about Masons at this point as most people who aren't a Mason, more than that. More than most people who aren't a Mason know. But I don't know any of the secret work.
Yeah.
So. And truthfully, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Right. So, I had a thought. You wrecked my train.
I'm good at that.
So something else that I know actually did affect us, because for right now we've been talking about, you know, the fact that I wanted to be a Mason wasn't a general concern at all. Very limited question about why are there even things I can't tell you and what could they be.
Right.
But I know the one thing that did impact us was the time.
That's because you jumped headlong into it.
I did. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, how much time I had, how much free time I had before joining the Freemasons, what changed, and then how we worked through that?
Well, if you think about it, before you were in the Masons, I had 100% of your time. Unless you were going to work, of course, but that doesn't really count. So every single night you were here at home with me, and I coveted your time. With Freemasonry, the lodge that you're in is a mandatory one night a month. And but then you guys meet once a week, so that's 4 to 5 times a month. And then you were going to practice, so that you could learn the work, and then you were going to the special fundraisers and they get together every time they can, and I don't blame them. I mean, they're friends. They're learning about each other. They're learning about this work that makes them better as people, and you had a hunger for it.
If I can interject something there, so just kind of extra explanation. So, like you said, most lodges meet once a month.
Mandatorily.
Yeah, especially even in our area, it's not just that's the mandatory. It is really actually what they do. But my lodge was meeting every single week,
And it
no
still
matter
does.
what, and it still does. But we're not the only lodge in the area. There's 8 other lodges.
And they all meet on different nights.
Right. And so that was part of, it was like, oh, well, hey, I'm trying to learn whatever degree.
And you were gone 2, 3, 4 nights a week.
Exactly. Yeah.
For the first 2 or 3 years, because almost within 2 or 3 years, he ended up the master of our lodge because he jumped headlong into this. But it was really easy to rein him back in. I just simply pointed out that even the lodge says, even the Masons say, that family comes first. And I told him that he wasn't home enough. And so he took the next year off and only went to the stated meetings once a month.
Yep. And so to me, that's the way the relationship should work. That's why our marriage has been so good for the last 15 years, is that we communicate at that level. And I got so excited about everything I was learning in Freemasonry and all the new people I was meeting that I allowed it to slip past me that I was doing something different. I took away not just most, but pretty much all of my family time away.
But at the same time, I let you do it.
Well, yeah. But then and the time that you came to me was right before elections. And you said, okay, yeah. And when it was the worst was the year I was master.
Yes.
Because that's when not only was my lodge was extremely busy that year.
Yeah.
That
you guys
was
had more
we got the
degrees.
Yeah, we actually got the award for the entire state, giving doing the most degrees that year. That's how busy we were. And then on top of that, I was trying to be not only the master of my lodge, but also the ambassador of the lodge, and I was trying to go to every single degree in the area and visit these other lodges, which was good in the sense that it got more activity, more people visiting Longstreet Lodge as well.
Oh yeah, and Longstreet Lodge at this point is one of the bigger lodges in our area.
Yeah. So, but right when elections were about to happen, we knew I would be coming out of the East, and that's when you kind of sat me down and said, hey, how about next year you don't do anything?
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went into lodge, and before the election started, I told everybody, hey, I've loved serving as master this year, but I promised my wife, and I do not want to be elected or appointed in any positions. And that was perfectly fine. That's the way it went. I still went to most of the stated communications the next year, but I was, compared to before, I was basically inactive.
Yeah.
And then
he went to almost nothing for the next year, and then got reelected as the master of the lodge the following year.
Yeah. Yep.
But he's learned how to balance his time out between lodge and family, and I've learned that when he's not spending enough time at home to tell him no.
Yeah. So I think the critical thing there for the men is to remember that you were told in your charge, in your entered apprentice degree, that family comes before the lodge. And then for the ladies out there to be willing to point that out to the men when they let things get out of control. And
because they do, they get a hunger for it. I mean, all of us, when we really find a piece of knowledge that we want to learn, we all do it and let time get away from us. So
yep. So another question that somebody said might fall into this realm is, why is it men only? And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm curious if that ever was a question that crossed your mind, or...
It was, but that's simply because I coveted your time so much, and I still do. I would love to be a fly on that wall every day just to sit next to him.
Yeah.
But
I could go in the men's room and you'd question why you can't follow me into that in a public restroom.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. um, but so I mean, because to me the answer is so simple. It is and has been a fraternity, and by definition, a fraternity is a group of men.
Right.
And so to me, it's kind of odd that it even is a question.
Well, if you think about this, if there were women involved, we'd take over.
Yes.
And men and women are completely different, and guys need to hang out with other men in order to better themselves. And so I think that's the reason why it's men only.
Well, I think you hit a good point there, because us guys, we do like to have a certain we like to present ourselves in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incumbent on us inside of the lodge to counsel each other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can go up to another guy and say, "Hey, bro, I need to talk to you about something." But am I going to do that in front of his spouse who might be there, or my spouse that might be there, or anybody else? No, I'm not.
No.
And so it does sort of open that up a little bit more to be more plain with each other and talk about things. And it's not that we can't do it. It's just like something that's hardwired in most of our heads is, hey, if I'm going to talk to my brother, I ain't going to do it in front of a lady.
There's a perfect example. Eastern Star is men and women. You walk into an Eastern Star meeting, and even if the numbers are even, you're going to see the women in circles talking and the men off to the sides. No one's talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because guys don't generally open up to other guys if there's women around.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. That's probably true. I think, I have noticed that before. Mm-hmm. Unless we get a big enough crowd of us, or half of us go outside to have a smoke before lodge or something like that. Yeah, that's pretty much true. Okay. So we've already talked about the time. We've talked about the secrets, so to speak. Now, there are also all sorts of speculations out there about what Freemasons are and what they aren't.
Okay.
Sometimes sometimes those concerns spur in a way from what are known as the Taxel hoax. Leo Taxel was a guy who wrote several books over a course of years, and he specifically was writing hoaxes. He knew he was telling tall tales, and he, at the end of the day, after 7 years of writing these books, he held a press conference, and he told everybody, look, this was a hoax this whole time. I just wrote up a fiction story, and everybody bought into it, so I kept writing. Well, the thing is if you go look up about Leo Taxel, he flat out said that the claims he made in his original writing were so outrageous, he thought it was plain as day that it was a hoax and just silly, but people ate it up like it was truth. And so, being somebody who made a penny off of writing, he said, hey, if that's what people are buying, that's what I'm going to keep writing.
Right.
And so he kept writing it.
Well, people generally believe the worst in things.
Yeah.
I mean, we're hardwired to.
Yeah. So for example, and this is kind of where things get really screwy, is because Leo Taxel was at the same time as Albert Pike. And I don't know how much I've ever spoke to you about Albert Pike but he was very critical in the Scottish Rite, especially in our area, in rewriting how some of the rituals were done. And so Leo Taxel goes off far to the side, and he calls Albert Pike by titles that don't even exist. Albert Pike, while he held many prominent positions, Leo Taxel made him look like he was the supreme world leader of all Freemasons, and he had some just outrageous titles about it, which works because we use outrageous titles in Freemasonry, and so when he came up with even more outrageous titles, people easily buy into it,
Right.
Well, in there he's making claims to devil worship and all these kind of things, and so people start to believe it, and people in churches pick it up. And then people in the churches start writing pamphlets and publications about it. And all of a sudden this becomes like the standard thing to go preach at the pulpit. And so then 7 years later, after hearing all this stuff, the guy comes up and says, dude, it's a joke. Well, that doesn't stop everything.
No, it's not
You've already started pushing the boulder down the hill, and it's going to keep rolling.
Doesn't matter how much you're trying to stop it.
So the question here was, or it was more of a comment. The person said that, his wife said something about how her pastor was talking about how Masons take blood oaths. And I mean, the problem with this is you and I could sit here all day and talk to this camera, and anybody who wants to believe that is still going to believe it.
Right.
Which is why I don't usually touch on this stuff much on the video.
Again, trying to get the boulder to stop rolling downhill.
Right. The only way for you to ever know whether or not any of that stuff really does take place or does not is to join. And if you actually think it's happening, then why would you join?
Right. And
there you end up with the loggerhead, and you never get anywhere.
Well, I can attest to this much. He's never come home with his hands torn up.
There you go. So probably the best way I have of addressing this is I joined Freemasonry because of the conduct and character of other men that I knew, who I then learned were Freemasons.
Right.
And it made me think, well, if those men I hold in such high regard are Freemasons, then maybe that's an institution I want to learn more about.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of good men that are holding good positions in our area that are part of your lodge.
And I think that if you can somehow in your head go from these people are good people that I admire out in the world, but you also believe that behind a closed door in a building that they're doing something so unspeakable that if you knew they were doing it, you would never talk to them, then there's just some wires that aren't connected in your own mind, because it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Are there people out there who are deceiving and hide things and whatever? Sure there are. But an entire fraternity? I mean, just here in Mississippi, there's 15,000 Freemasons. That's rounding up. And you're telling me that out of 15,000 people, we're able to keep some kind of a secret about taking blood oaths and worshiping Satan while we still go to church and have pastors that are in our lodge that also go and teach on Sunday and everything else?
Let me put that one to rest for just a second. Think about this. If you have a brand new member walk in, has absolutely no idea what they're expecting. They get initiated into this fraternity, and it's about, if it were about Satan, if it were about blood oaths, if it were about demons or anything else for that matter that was negative, wouldn't they go running and immediately tell everyone, hey, look, you don't want to be doing this?
Yeah. And that's a good point too, because pretty much everything you ever hear, if a pastor does decide to bring up Freemasonry, which doesn't happen very often, really, you can trace it back to that Leo Taxel hoax thing. Not because Billy, who's a member in the congregation, went to go join last week and this is what happened.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a good point. So kind of related to these things. Now, I don't know who ever drew them, but there are what would amount to like last century's memes, like little postcards that had funny scenes about Freemasons, and they would depict the things like riding the goat and all that kind of stuff. So just to put it out there, have you ever seen us have any kind of animals up at the lodge or heard about animals at the lodge? I mean, this person specifically asks about goats, cattle, or even emus, because there was an emu farm across the way from where their lodge was. We happen to have a cattle farm right across from our lodge. So have you ever seen us doing anything creepy or funky with these animals?
Creepy or funky? No. I've had my service dog up in there, but that's about
Yeah, we got a really big grill pit we cook some animals on.
Oh, those pigs taste really good.
So, you folks, I understand that you guys have serious questions, and we're kind of laughing about things here, but um, it's hard for us to understand where those questions come from because we're involved. And to us, it feels like a very odd thing to ask because there just isn't. And I don't know how else to explain that or how else to convince anybody. It's the same thing as the other hoaxes. There's really nothing I can say to prove it.
Yep.
I mean, park outside of a lodge and sit there and wait for a month, and whenever the members show up, see if they take any animals inside. And unless they're in a package and ready to be grilled, they won't.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. What other kind of questions we have now? This is a good one because we've both been very active in churches and even in different faiths. Mm-hmm. And so the question here is, does Freemasonry conflict in any way with the Word of God?
Absolutely not. It actually uses the Word of God.
Okay.
It's the same thing with Eastern Star. They actually use the Word of God. And I believe you've told me before that the Scottish Rite uses other works too.
It does. Yep. So yeah, the York Rite stays strictly biblical. Mm-hmm. It's just King James Version of the Bible through and through. Whereas the Scottish Rite takes a broader approach to say, we recognize the good morals and deeds and lessons in the Bible, but we also think we can learn something from these other things. And
right.
So we bring in things like the Kabbalah. We bring in,
And it's not to say that they're teaching these different holy books.
No, it's not.
But it's just that they're taking the good stories out of them and the good morals out of them and pointing out, hey, look, this is how this is similar.
Yeah, it's never in a way to say this is the way you should worship, or this is this is the Word of God, or that is the Word of God. It's saying, hey, let's think about this in a philosophical way. What kind of things can we learn from it? Just like in symbolic lodge masonry, we learn things from a 24-inch gauge or a common gavel or a square or a level or a plumb. These things that
or a sword.
Right. These things would seem like common, just everyday place items to most people, but we look at them in a different way and apply them in a different way.
Right.
So you can sit there and have the Kabbalah, which to a Jew may have some very deep spiritual meanings. Mm-hmm. But to us, we say, hey, that's a great way to think about this. Instead of applying the Kabbalah to how divinity is and how I should worship the divine, how can I apply this to the principles of living a good life on earth and all those kind of things? So it's very hard to explain without doing a 6-hour course on what Scottish Rite is.
But it doesn't conflict with the Word of God. It actually uses it.
Okay. Now we tried talking about this before the video, and I'm not sure that we ever came up with a good way to explain it, but a common phrase that is used to sort of elevator pitch Freemasonry. Somebody comes up to me and says, hey, what are the Freemasons? What do y'all even do? I probably wouldn't use this line, but it's a common line that says, we take good men and make them better.
Well, this is actually an easy one. If you think about it, you are the company you keep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And if you are keeping the company of other men that are trying to bring themselves up in the world, then you're going to elevate yourself as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's even all the lessons aside, just the people you're hanging out with. I love hanging out with them. They've got they've got positive energy. They've got great work morals. They've got wonderful wives. They're all their children are generally all well behaved. You are the company you keep. But then on top of that, it's teaching you all of these good ways to live and giving you examples of people in the Bible, and with Scottish Rite, with these other books that are living upright lives and showing you examples of how you should be living. And yes, you have definitely become a better person for joining this fraternity.
There you go, from the horse's mouth. All right, so now this one we've we talked about before, but we talked about it because of the last half of this comment I'm about to read, and I want to share this because I thought it was a little bit funny. This person's wife said, "You joined a theater fraternity with all the practices that you go to." And I kind of came back and I said, "Well, is she wrong though?" And he said, "Well, no, I guess not." Because I'm sure it feels that way. I mean, if you know, and even now I'll say, "Well, I'm going to practice. Well, I'm going to practice." Like, well, what do you got, Broadway opening next week, or what are you practicing, doing all this practicing for?
Usually it's right before another degree too.
Yeah, and mostly it's not it is because I need the practice. But mostly it's because we keep practicing it because new people come into the fraternity and they need to learn it. Right. And so the people who feel like they have some sort of a grasp on it need to show up to do the teaching.
Right.
You know, I mean, you got to have a mentor if you're going to be an apprentice and learn something new. And so the mentors have to go too. So sometimes saying I'm going to practice means I have to go learn a part, or I have to practice the part that I'm supposed to learn. But sometimes it could also mean
I need to go teach it.
I need to go teach it. I need to go be a stagehand. I need to go cook the meal beforehand that's at the practice, or whatever. But generally speaking, Freemasons, we just keep it stupid simple and we say, I'm going to practice.
Right.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of them. And that goes back to what we were talking about, being better managers of our time and making sure we do put family first.
Yeah.
All right. So as I said at the very beginning, no, I can't do this short. But I hope that that if you are watching this because your significant other is thinking about joining Freemasonry, then I hope that you're getting something out of this. Now, there's one last thing that I want to touch on here, and quite honestly, I don't know that I've ever even really spoken to you about this before. So we're going to kind of talk our way through this now.
Okay.
And a part of this is something that even I wasn't familiar with until not very long ago. So the question here, or the comment, was how a man who's getting into the fraternity could speak to his spouse or partner about what the benefits are to them, and how, while I may be going and getting this fraternal bond with a bunch of guys, what does that really mean for you? Does it do anything for you? And I think sometimes we do fail in explaining to our wives what benefits actually exist. So is there anything that you do know about? Or
Well, I know for one that if anything ever happened to you, every single one of them would come running to our door to make sure that I was okay, to make sure that there was nothing here that needed to be done, to make sure the kids are taken care of. I know that if anything ever happened to you, I'd be well cared for because of it.
Okay. Now, the counterpoint with that, and it's a valid counterpoint, is, well, but I'm very active in my church. Can't I just get that from them? Or all my family lives in this area. I can just get that from them. And maybe so.
Maybe so.
But
more is always better.
Yeah. There's other benefits too. And not just necessarily for you, but there's scholarships that are available to the children if I pass away while I'm a Master Mason in good standing, and those are the kind of benefits that vary from state to state.
Right.
So we can't really line those types of benefits out here. So if you're curious about what sort of I can't think, fringe benefits isn't the right word, because that's, like something you're getting while you're employed, but any of those other benefits, that's something you'll want to talk to somebody locally about and find out, well, what does happen if my husband's a Master Mason, or you're thinking about joining the Masons. What happens when you die? What do I need to know about if that happens? What do I need to know about if you become disabled? What if something happens to you? Who do I call at Lodge to let them know? At this point, everybody at Lodge anyway, and you just call somebody yourself.
Well, I'll give you a really good example. Very recently, one of the highly decorated members of his lodge fell victim to dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And the brothers all helped him move into the nursing home, and they're visiting him every day to make sure that he's got company, making sure that his wife's okay and that she doesn't need anything, and
Mm-hmm.
just they take care of each other. They really do.
Yeah. And I think a part of that is, on one hand, I am my brother's keeper.
Yeah.
Comes into play, but also there's that connection. Like that brother in particular that you're mentioning, he's a past master of the lodge. He's done a lot of educating men on his own. He's traveled around the state and all sorts of things, and you get to a point where, hey, this isn't just some guy I'm a member of the same club with.
Yeah.
This is a guy who invested his time and effort in me,
Right.
and now he needs me.
It.
And so I'm going to invest the time and effort into him. And I think that's part of the intimacy, if you will, of the brotherhood, But so while, if some disaster fell upon me right now, and maybe you could go to my employment or go to the church or go to wherever and get the same type of help that the lodge would do. Another example is something that I don't think it's talked about often enough, and probably because, especially with us, if we travel together.
Right.
I can't think of any time that
It's rare.
Yeah, especially any distance, outside of the state where you've gone by yourself or something like that. So you have that intimate community where you live, your church, your work, your family. But what if you're 1,000 miles away from home and the car breaks down or whatever? And that's where being part of something larger than just your local community can provide a benefit.
For instance, there is someone nearby that owns a tow truck company that's part of the Masons, and we broke down in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 3 hours from here, and he drove all the way out there, picked up the car, and brought it all the way back.
Well, but even a step beyond that, because that put us out of the way, and he still came to assist us even though we were out of the way.
Right.
But we could have also contacted the local lodge.
Right, and they would have helped us.
Right. And so the thing here is that benefit that could be to a spouse of, hey, if I'm not home, or if you have traveled or whatever, and you run into this problem, who you going to call? I got to have a place to sleep for the night. The car ran out of gas. The car broke down. Whatever. Who's actually going to help me?
Right, and we've had Masons jump to our help like
Right.
that before.
And chances are, let's say you're Baptist and you call up the local Baptist church. Are they going to help you?
Probably not.
Well, I would have
They
said
might.
I would have said probably they would.
Okay.
But it's not the same level of connection. The Masons are sitting there waiting for the phone call.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. It's like, they're just ready to jump on that phone call saying, I need help.
Well, when we went to Kentucky, we actually went to a lodge out there, and we had breakfast there. And you had written a check for them for the breakfast because it was a fundraiser. It was a weekly fundraiser, but it was a fundraiser. Well, what was it, like 2 weeks later?
Yeah.
We got the check back in the mail. It said void across the top of it.
Yep. They said it was their pleasure to give a meal to a brother that was visiting, and that was that. But so there was an old tradition, and I think I have my own opinion on why it's kind of fallen away. But there used to be I say used to be, it still exists, but you can get a pin that looks like a slipper or a high heel shoe, however you want to phrase it, that has the Masonic square and compasses on it. And the idea is that it's the lady's slipper. And so you would wear that, and if you were out and about in town, traveling or wherever, somebody could see that and say, oh, she's the wife of a Master Mason. But I could jump on Amazon and order that anytime I want.
Right, so anyone could get it.
Right. So it's a lot more common than it you can't identify somebody based on that. Just because I have a ring with a square and compass is not identification that I am, honest to goodness, a Freemason.
It just means most likely you are.
Right. But I mean, even on social media, I've had people contact me, and because I put up a video saying, hey, this is, the right way to wear the insignia kind of thing, and people wrote back saying, hey man, I bought a ring because I
thought it was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I knew a couple Freemasons. I wanted to be supportive of the organization, but I'm not one. Is it okay that I'm wearing this? And I say, hey, look, we appreciate the support, but no, it's really not, and so I think kind of for those reasons, we get away from something like a lady slipper pin. But what you can do is just talk to somebody. You can talk to your husband. You can look it up your darn self, because who needs no man, right?
I do, for the record.
But you can look up the local Masonic. I mean, heck, for heaven's sakes, you can get on Google Maps on your phone and type in Masonic Lodge and find one. And maybe it's not the one that happens to be 2 miles down the road hidden in the trees that you can't see. But you can call that one and get somebody to answer, and you can say, hey, I'm on this interstate, my tire's busted, my husband's a master mason and past master out of Mississippi, and I'm just trying to find somebody that can help. And that person would say, sister, I know where you're at. There's another lodge right around the corner. I know who to call. Give me 5 minutes. And then they would make the phone calls and get you the help that you need.
He loves sitting on Google looking up these Master Mason lodges, because every time we travel, we stop at least one of them, and we've seen some pretty neat ones.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because, sometimes you find them in the middle of downtown and they're very prominent, or sometimes they're like my lodge, way out back in the country, and you wouldn't.
Sometimes they're in someone's house.
Yeah, we ran across one that the sign was outside of someone's house, and I was like, holy cow, we need to.
We're not knocking on that door.
Yeah, before we get the cops called on us, snooping around, because we drove past it like 3 times trying to find out where this thing was, until finally I saw a little tiny sign that had the name of the lodge on it. I'm like, oh, well, we're going to get the cops called on us for cruising up and staking out this house. But anyway, so the point there is that by the man being a part of the fraternity, there are benefits to the entire family. Not just in, well, it made me be a better man. Not just in that, it refocused the point that family is first, or those kind of things, but also benefits of, hey, Jennifer, don't forget while you're traveling, if this happens, then don't forget to look up the Masons. If I pass away, don't forget to call the Grand Lodge and find out about stuff. So there's those other benefits there as well. So, all right, well, Jennifer, anything else you can think to tell you? There's an entire world of women watching us right now because their husband or boyfriend said, I want to join the Freemasons, and she said, well, I don't know what I think about that, and he Googled it and found us, and now they're watching. So anything you can think to say to her to try to make her feel any better? Any questions she ought to be asking him that maybe she's not thinking about? Anything like that? The
only thing I can think of is if he's wanting to join the Freemasons, if it's for the right reasons, then his heart's in the right place. And I honestly think that it's one of the better things out there for men. I mean, there's a lot of guys going downhill these days, and really this is a institution that helps lift them back up.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Thank you for doing this for me.
You're welcome.
She's not a humongous fan of being on video, so y'all make sure you leave a nice comment down below and thank her for taking the time to do this. I appreciate y'all putting up with this very long video. I know that's not custom for us, but I wanted to try to get as many questions and things addressed, and it seemed to be just right to do it in this conversational kind of format. So it takes longer, but I hope that maybe y'all get more out of it by doing that. So thank you all so much for taking the time to watch. If you do have any other questions, please make sure you leave them down in the comments below, and I will try to answer them as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.